Okay, good afternoon, and thank you both for joining me. I'm Noah Eckstein, editor-in-chief of the Overlook, a nonprofit newspaper serving Saugerties, Woodstock, Hunter, Olive, Shandaken, and Hurley. Today, we're speaking with the two candidates for Saugerties Town Supervisor, incumbent and Democratic and Working Families nominee Fred Costello, and challenger, conservative nominee Gaetana Ciarlante, ahead of the upcoming election on November 4th. The conversation is part of the Overlook's ongoing election coverage, which aims to help residents make informed choices about the future of their communities. We'll be discussing topics including transparency and accountability in local government, housing affordability, development and land use, climate change, cell service infrastructure, and fiscal management. Thank you both again for taking the time to speak with the Overlook. Before we begin, I'd just like to outline a few quick parameters for today's discussion. This is a structured Q&A, not a formal debate. Each of you will have the opportunity to answer the same core questions in turn. I'll alternate who responds first to ensure balance. After each question, you'll both have the option for a brief rebuttal or clarification, limited to about 30 seconds or a minute, if you'd like to respond. The conversation will last about an hour, and the goal here is to give Saugerties residents a clear understanding of what each candidate's priorities are and approach to leadership. With that, let's begin. Thank you both for your time. Both of you have deep roots in Saugerties. Gaetana, starting with you, please tell voters more about what do you see as the single most important issue, a little bit more about you, and how you would address that in your first year in office.
Okay. Thank you, Noah. Thank you for putting this on. And for giving us this opportunity. I believe that the most important issue right now is affordability, and that spears off into a whole lot of different directions. For example, land use, development, overdevelopment, so-called affordable housing. And also one of the biggest issues is transparency in government and being able to trust what we, be able to see what's going on instead of having, things happen behind closed doors. So that's a big issue. It all has to do with getting back to, whether or not people want to stay in Saugerties, whether or not they feel like they have input into decisions that are being made. People feel like they're being squeezed out. Longtime residents have actually come to me and said, we're being squeezed out. And the land speculation that's going on, all of these are intertwined.
Thank you. Fred, same question to you. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what is the single most important topic issue in Saugerties right now that you want to tackle if you're reelected?
So I grew up here in Saugerties. I'm a graduate of Saugerties High School. I participate in my family businesses, as well as have had the honor to represent Saugerties as an elected official for a number of years. I have been a supervisor since 2018, and I'm very honored to have had that role and earned the trust of our residents to represent them in this capacity. And as far as what's the most pressing issue, I think land use is at the forefront. We all know that we are facing a number of petitions to amend zoning to accommodate land use. I'm proud of where we stand as a community right now. My entire time of service has been dedicated to planning land use for our community. We were part of authoring the largest traffic study in Saugerties history, the largest water resources study in Saugerties history. The species study was the largest one that was ever conducted in Saugerties history. We have collected a lot of data that is proving very, very useful as we contemplate the changes that we may experience moving forward. And affordability is a problem. Our budgets here have been challenged just like our budgets have been at home. I'm proud of the job we've been able to do over the past 7.5 years regarding our budgets. We were under the 2% cap all but 2 years. The 1 year where we violated the cap was to support Diaz ambulance service, and I believe I would do that exact same thing. Again, Diaz is a critical safety infrastructure component to our community, and absent having Diaz, we would find ourselves in an unfortunate situation where ambulance or EMS services may not be available to our residents without that agreement. I'm very grateful to former Supervisor Hellsmort's leadership in that role, because under his leadership, there was the first EMS contract, and we've been able to sustain that. I also find it comforting in an odd way that many communities in Ulster County are subscribing to the model that we have employed successfully for more than 20 years. So that's a critical problem, also a costly one. And then the other year we violated the cap was last year. That was just a function of increases in insurance, salaries, driven both of those uncontrollable costs. And, our response to that has been proactive in trying to make sure that the size of the current government is sustainable and that it can be relatively affordable to all of our residents.
I'd like to say that you also have a public hearing scheduled to exceed the 2%.
Yep. So as a practice,
this year.
we have that as part of every budget cycle. Normally, the first round of the budget exceeds the cap. Last year was the perfect example. We started the budget process with an 18% increase, and we were able to manage that down to about an 8% increase. This year, we started the budget cycle with about an 8% increase, and that is down substantially from where we started. And I'm still optimistic that we may not need to exercise the authority of breaking the cap.
Okay, thank you. And we'll get to affordability and rural healthcare a little bit later, but I want to jump to something that is on everyone's minds. You know, the Winston Farm proposal has become one of the most divisive issues in Saugerties, with supporters pointing to economic opportunity and opponents citing environmental and water concerns. Gaetana, how do you plan to balance development, environmental protection, and public input in deciding the future of Winston Farm and similar development projects in Saugerties?
Okay. Well, these mixed-use communities are kind of all the rage right now. And I have a little bit of experience because I spent some time in Ohio where they have done that, and it has brought business. On the other hand, they didn't build it on top of an aquifer. And we have an industrial corridor. And, you know, there's no reason why jobs that are in Manhattan can't come up here now, you know, with telecommunicating businesses that are in Manhattan, they could move up here. I don't like the location of it. I know that people have said now for decades, we have to do something about Winston Farm. Well, maybe we really don't have to do something about Winston Farm. Maybe we can let Saugerties grow gracefully. And the reason that people feel like we need that is because they're thinking that we always need to raise taxes. You know, we need to put something there that can help create that can help pay for the taxes. But we need to get government under control. And there's been a lot of misspending for the last, I'm going to say for the last 20 years, I know at least the last 10 that is substantiated here in this town. And that's part of the reason why I'm running, by the way, because I'm right now acting chairman of the Saugerties Conservative Party. And I have tried to recruit someone to run for supervisor. And I wasn't successful with that. But prior to that, George Heidekamp, he was a marvelous investigator. He really believed in justice, just a marvelous person all the way around. And he went through all the receipts for the last 10 years. I wasn't privy to all of them except for the last couple of years, and there was a lot of misspending. So government really needs to be brought under control. That's my firm belief. And just, I mean, so many things are beyond our control, but government does need to be brought under control. I plan to be a watchdog. I plan to really, really take a look at where the spending's going. There's been a lot of mistakes. There was a $7,000 check, excuse me, not a check, but someone's payroll check was going to a bank in California just a few years ago to the tune of $7,000 before it was caught. And I believe that it was never repaid to us. I don't know where the money went. That's just one example. There's a lot of unauthorized spending, and that's the job of the supervisor. The job of the supervisor, they're the chief fiscal officer, and they have to watch like a watchdog where the money's being spent. I could go on for some more examples here, but I'm going to leave it like that for now.
Yeah, Fred, I definitely want to give you a chance to respond to that, and also to talk about, Winston Farms, where we're at, and plans for the future. But Gaetana, I want to just provide a follow-up to you, which is
Yes.
what is, for people who don't know, what are your qualifications to be supervisor, to be that watchdog fiscally for the town?
Well, I have experience as a leader. I was a team leader. I worked for Ulster County Mental Health for about 28 years, actually. And in addition to that, I started a 501(c)(3) called Operation SOS. We raised money and we sent packages to our troops. It's still, the organization is still in existence. So that involved, working with a budget, raising money and working with a budget. And I have a small business right now, which is it's called Hudson Riverfront Preservation, and it's a B&B with a historical background to it. And so when people come, they're exposed to the history of Glasgow, which is a really interesting history, and one that I'm proud of with my family history too. And it's a challenge, to keep things under budget, but it has to be done.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Fred.
Well, I'm not sure we just answered either question that you asked. With regarding to Winston Farm, I'm happy to talk about that, but a tangent was brought in of something I want to address. Mrs. Ciarlante invoked former Chairman Mr. Heidecamp. It is beyond my understanding how her understanding of the work he did has been so perverted and used regularly in campaign propaganda. I have a copy of an email that was relatively new, I believe, indicating that we spent monies that are just completely inaccurate. And a lot of the assertions that were just made, I got access to my town credit card in 2018. Trying to make some type of charges that may have happened before that are somehow my responsibility is absurd. Number one. Number two, I have one of 6 credit cards, and charges that were made by other card holders stand on their own. And making allegations that somehow those charges are related to me is also kind of ridiculous. I stand by every purchase I made. And in this most recent propaganda, there's an accusation that I took a $476 mileage allowance. That is absolutely 100% true. In 2019, I was on vacation with my family. The town was embattled in a long-standing case with a resident who was illegally dumping in High Woods in 212. The court case came in the middle of our vacation. My response wasn't to say that I'll stay here on vacation. I traveled home, attended court for 2 days, and then traveled back to finish my vacation with my family. And I did take a mileage allowance. To give this context, that very year, there was a $4,000 mileage allowance built into the supervisor's budget, which I did not accept. So if you want to somehow assert that by me taking a $476 mileage allowance in a year where I was eligible for $4,000 is somehow taking advantage of the local government, I strongly disagree. And that case was monumental. That was a sea change moment, not just for Saugerties, but for all of Ulster County. We went through, I think, like 9 judges and 6 courts to get a resolution to that matter. And the scar of it still exists today. We are now working with the DEC to try to mitigate the impact that that illegal dumping had. I would make that same decision today. And I make no apologies for taking a mileage allowance when I left my family vacation, traveled 3.5 hours to get here, attended court for 2 days, and went back to my family vacation 3.5 hours, right in the middle, right absolutely in the middle.
Fred, let me
These
just
types of
let me
allegations are representative of the propaganda that
let me just
either
jump in
she is
here.
willfully spreading or ignorantly spreading. But either way, it is it's sad and it's diminishing. And the idea that you have asked 2 questions and haven't gotten a straight answer, I think is telling about what we're having here.
So let me recenter the focus here. I appreciate, Fred having the opportunity to respond to things that were mentioned by Gaetana, but moving forward in this conversation, I think voters are tired of the back and forth, the attacks. I think what this serves as is a way for voters to really understand what your plan is, both of your plans.
With respect, I'm happy to answer your questions.
I know, and I'm talking to both of you.
When you ask a question and don't get a response, but I'm faced with an attack, I'm absolutely going to respond.
I understand. So moving forward, speaking to both of you, I would really just like the answers to the questions. There are other forums, places and times for this back and forth, but I don't want this to devolve into that. So I'm going to go back to the Winston Farm question, and then we're going to move forward. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So just giving Fred the opportunity to respond to this, Winston Farm proposal, it's a divisive issue in Saugerties. Supporters pointing to the economic opportunity, opponents citing environmental concerns. How do you plan to balance this, and what are your thoughts moving forward for, if reelected on Winston Farm?
Okay. To me, right?
Yes.
Okay. So unfortunately, our community has had about a 15-year cycle of proposals for Winston Farm that the community, for good reasons, reject. And then things go away for a while, and then about 15 years later, something else comes back, and for good reasons, the community rejects. I think this current cycle is very important, and it presents an opportunity. We are absolutely not insulated from the outside world. This property has been marketed at various times, and it was never bought by a preservation group. It has been under private ownership since probably 100 years. That means that the owners have rights under the zoning law. They have rights as the property owners, and we want to be mindful and respectful of that. The current ownership is local, and they have reached out to the board and to the community and said, we want to rezone the property. And I think a lot of folks take that as they want to take advantage of the zoning to enhance their economic abilities on a property. I do not take it that way. The current zoning exists, and it is quite frankly dangerous and ugly. It would develop commercial space along 9W and across 32 and 212, which is quite frankly expired. The retail environment has changed dramatically. There's no market left for box retail for stores. And it would develop the property from 32 all the way up to Northwoods Road into single family home lots. That would not meet the highest and best use of the property. And I think that use particularly violates all the work that I lean to about the water study, the traffic study, the economic impacts that we may expect from some of that type of development. And it's a complete violation of the work that's gone into the comprehensive plan, which has been revised 3 times since I've been part of the board. And we know we can do better. So I take this as the opportunity, assuming this property is going to stay under private ownership, what do we want to allow on that property? And that's the question we need to answer. And I feel strongly there is an opportunity to give the residents a opportunity to enjoy the land with recreational opportunities, preserve large swaths of open space, and still create economic opportunity and housing opportunities on that property that are unique to Saugerties that we do not have right now. And it can check the boxes on affordability. It can check the boxes on retail in a modern way that is proving viable. And this type of development happens all over the East Coast. We haven't had it yet in Saugerties, but it is in parts of Dutchess County. When you look at Traditions in Red Hook, Eastdale, and Arlington, Warwick has a beautiful project. They kind of celebrate single-family home ownership in a traditional neighborhood development style. They mix in townhomes, apartments, and commercial retail opportunities for a live, work, play atmosphere. And all the evidence suggests that this is how people want to live. A large percentage of people want to live right now. And the evidence of that is when you go down south to communities that are growing rapidly, they are selling single-family homes on small lots and condominiums and townhomes at a very rapid pace. So I think that opportunity gives us the opportunity to use the water in a safe and responsible way, and not challenge, and this is something unique to Winston Farm, challenge the existing water infrastructure in any way. It's rare that you can have a development of this scale potentially and not have a negative impact on the current water resources, because this has its own. And we're working closely with the engineers and with all of the planners to make sure that the water that we identify is a safe taking that would consider fluctuations in droughts. I think for the folks that attended our last meeting, Russell Urban Mead came and explained the processes and his goals for how the study was conducted. We have a planner that advocates just for the town. They are reviewing Mr. Mead's work and will come up with their own perspective and recommendations. But I think this is a unique opportunity, and we can't afford not to do anything.
Thank you.
Current zoning would be devastating.
All right, thank you. Okay, moving on.
So I'd like to say something here. First of all, I was at that last meeting.
We got to move forward.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
I'll fit it in someplace else.
Okay. Another thing that a lot of residents are talking about, Saugerties residents have called for stronger accountability from local institutions after a series of sexual abuse cases involving former police officer and a school coach. The district and town have pledged reforms, but frustration is persisting. Gaetana, I'll go to you first. What specific steps will you take as supervisor, if elected, to ensure greater transparency and help rebuild public trust?
Yeah. Well, you'd like to go to me first, but that's okay. Yeah.
We're back and forth here. We're back and forth.
Okay. I've given this a lot of thought. For one thing, the town has a liaison with the police department. It's not freestanding. It's part of the police. It's part of the town government. And I think one of the things we need to do in town government is to switch perspectives by rotating who the town liaison is to the police department. I believe Fred has been the liaison to the police department for many, many years and currently is. And a lot of decisions that are made, and I know I'm getting a little bit sidetracked here, a lot of decisions that are made based on the town board talking to one another and trying to familiarize each other with these different committees or departments, as opposed to actually having firsthand experience with meeting with these people. So I know we have a new police chief on. My understanding and what I see, he's very good. These incidents go back. They go back for a while. I can't talk to the specifics about it because I don't know, but I know with one of the officers involved with one of the allegations here, there were prior allegations Why he came back onto the police force, I don't know. Maybe Fred could answer that. To me, that would be questionable. If there are questions about allegations made toward him in the past, I don't know why he would have been brought back on, especially in capacity that he was brought in on. And I also think we need to work closer with the schools. We need to have, and I don't ever really see that happening. I don't hear anything about the school districts when I go to town board meetings, which I do go to on a regular basis. They seem to be two different entities. And yet, there's a lot of involvement. There's a lot of, connection between the two. So I think we need a liaison also to the school. And I know they have an officer. There is an officer there. I think that kids need to be encouraged to and educated, into what is acceptable and what's not, so that they don't get drawn into a line that's, that is destructive to them.
Thank you.
And I think we really have to be careful who we hire. We hire a lot of people part-time, and we don't necessarily I see that we don't necessarily look to civil service to see who's available for these jobs. And sometimes we're hiring people on temporary basis, and then we're switching them to permanent without having clearance for civil service. So I think we need better clearance. And I also know that the former police chief, there was a lot of things that happened around that. And a lawsuit against the town. I understand several lawsuits against the town. I know of one in particular that's still in existence. We have to do better. Saugerties has to do better. Saugerties deserves better than that.
Okay, thank you, Gaetana. Fred,
Okay.
same question to you related to how are you and how do you plan to rebuild public trust in the face of, the allegations of sexual misconduct from a police officer and a school coach?
So with that matter specifically, I think it's worth noting that the SRO at the time, Travis Winchell, was the person that was most trusted in the school to share the information. One of the victims went to the SRO. I find that extraordinary. It's my understanding that the victim was a female. She trusted a male authority figure with that information, and that is what led to the investigation that later led to the indictments of the two individuals involved. Obviously, we do not condone the incidences that occur, but I'm proud of the fact that the SRO played such a critical role, and we acknowledge Travis Winchell many, many times for the work that he did as the SRO. In many ways, I think he redefined the position, provided support to fundraising efforts, didn't miss a basketball or football game, helped people with tutoring opportunities. He was really just a tremendous credit to him that program was successful as it was, and that this individual felt confident to go to him. I think is very noteworthy. I think it's also noteworthy that the administration in the police department took that information and immediately brought it to the proper authority for investigation. That is evidence that it worked. Certainly, Mr. Mills was a former member of our police department, and there was no blue wall of sorts that was going to insulate him from having to answer for the charges that were made. That worked. That is transparency at its best, and that is effective accountability. Painful, however, because unfortunately, anytime a law enforcement officer is involved in something like that, it does not just reflect on that officer, it reflects on the entire agency. And again, unfortunately, we have suffered that over the last couple of years. I am proud of our responses to that. The incidents involving the former chief and the officer who was involved in some other sexual harassment claims, again, uncomfortable, not things that we are happy to have to discuss, but we brought those into full light, full transparency, and there was responses to it. And yeah, unfortunately, it involved some lawsuits. Fortunately, so far, we have won every one, and the board has been exonerated in the effort that we took. And that was not just me as liaison, that was the entire town board, and a want to make the public feel confident that we are serious about accountability and transparency, especially with the police department. We have a very good administration, and we have a lot of things to be proud of in the police department. One other thing I'd like to share quickly, our commitment to the school has been unwavering. I have been a capable and powerful advocate for the improvements needed at the Riccardi School to enhance the safety entrances, and I'm still willing to do that. The administration is a little bit compromised right now, but I think when they get back to stable, that conversation will renew. Hopefully, I'm still here to help facilitate that project. Also, when I first became liaison to the police department, the federal funding for the SRO programs was drying up. We advocated for continuing that program, and at the time, we did not get support from the school to continue it. We funded it. The town government funded it. And we didn't do that just as a gesture to the school. It is a valuable tool to prevent crimes, to prevent young people from getting off on the bad foot, but it also solves a lot of crimes. Very often when there was a vandal who destroyed the bathrooms at the Cantine Field facility or did other types of damage, the SRO could watch the video and know by the walk of the individual who the likely suspect was. And we've been able to resolve a lot of crimes that have gone through family court and resulted in restitution for the damage that was done to our facility. So I'm glad that we stood by the SRO program for that period of time. And I'm also grateful to the leadership of former Superintendent Reinhardt, who came sharing the value of the SRO program and has shared in the cost ever since. Matt Culler is our new SRO. He's doing a great job. I hope that the school continues their relationship with the town government over that program. And I look forward to working with them. And I'm very proud of Matt so far. He's been doing a great job, and all the feedback we've gotten so far has been very positive.
So I'd like to respond to that, Noah. And that's
Okay, please keep it to 30 seconds.
okay. Okay, winning a case does not mean that it didn't cost the town a lot of money. In addition to that, I know that some cases were settled. For example, I know of one of the former employee that was settled to the tune of $75,000. And I know that there's and that's still got, that person still has issues pending against the town in a lawsuit.
Yep. Their public officials have a very important responsibility to educate themselves and to treat our employees with respect. When those things do not happen, the implications for them are very dangerous and potentially expensive. And unfortunately, there have been occasions where employees were not treated appropriately, and the town has suffered with that.
Well, I'm going to use my time here because an employee came to me and wanted me to call one of these people who are currently suing the town. And I have not done it because I don't want to get involved at this level, at this point.
Okay, thank you. Again, recentering our conversation, we still have a few questions to get through that are really important that voters really want to know about. So if you can limit both of your responses to 2 minutes and then rebuttals to 30 seconds, that would be ideal. So we're gonna move on to affordability. It's on everybody's mind, not only in Saugerties, across our service area, but across the country. You know, housing costs are soaring. The availability of affordable rentals is dwindling. It's hard to find rental spaces. It's hard to be a first-time home buyer. Gaetana, starting with you, if elected, what specific steps would you take to make housing in Saugerties more attainable for residents who are renters and those hoping to buy, while still preserving the town's character?
No, that's an interesting question. But one of the things is that we need to cut the cost of town government. We need to cut taxes. And for one thing, I'm glad to know that the supervisor has $4,000, slush fund for mileage, because that would be the number one thing that I would cut. And
That's not what I said.
I would stand.
I actually removed that in 2022. You can happily look back on the town
Why
budget,
is he?
and that's one of the
why is he on my
gestures.
time?
Because you're
Hold on,
making a
hold
direct
on, hold on,
recommendation,
hold
you're
on.
not answering his question.
Yeah.
But I
I'm
removed
talking
that
about
Hold on,
$4,000
hold on.
stipend from
Pause,
the
please,
budget.
pause.
And I'm the
pause.
first supervisor,
Pause.
probably
Fred,
in the last 30 years, not to take it.
Supervisor Costello, Gaetana, please hold on. These questions are meant to give you an opportunity to talk about your plan, what you will do, not so much what has been done. We've had a lot of that back and forth already. And what that's signaling to voters is a bit of chaos, to be honest. So I'm asking you, as if you're elected Supervisor Gaetana, what will you do to make living, housing, renting more affordable?
Okay, but it is part of that is that I would cut that from the budget. I don't think there
Already
needs to be a $4,000
Already
availability.
2022. And if you were
Why
you would
is
know.
he interrupting?
Let Gaetana answer, please.
In addition to that, we're very restricted here now as to what we can do and cannot do on our own property. And they have a maintenance, property maintenance agreement by which, you know, we have to watch what we can and cannot do. But anyway, one of the big things about with this is property taxes. And I happen to know that in other states, they don't go out and reassess every year. We every year, this is like part of the land speculation. And as we see the prices are going up every year, the people who have lived here for many, many years are being raised their assessments are being raised according to what the market is, even though these homes are not on the market and we don't have that value in our pocket. That's just a projected value. Those assessments do not need to be done every year. And what the time at which they're done in other states is at the time of the sale. But it's not something that people can plan in their budgets, and they hold their breaths as to whether or not, you know, they can afford to stay and afford, you know, to the taxes and to stay there. I also think there needs to be more jobs here. And one of the things that I talked about was getting these companies who are in New York City, who right now are probably going to be very eager to leave New York City, and to get them and to build and to come on and place their business on the industrial corridor that I'm not quite sure when it's been designated as an industrial corridor, but it is a place for them here. The industrial corridor is along Kings Highway, and most of that is vacant. So that would bring jobs. You know, we can't just put all our eggs in one basket, as we saw what happened around IBM here. There's a place for small businesses, and that has to be encouraged here. We have to encourage
Fred.
people to, okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Gaetana. Fred, I want to give you the opportunity to answer that same question, talking about housing affordability and what you will do if reelected. That, you know, make sure that Saugerties stays affordable for workers.
So we have housing affordability lines right up with economic opportunity. We have some great employers in the town of Saugerties, and they pay very competitive living wages. However, not everyone is going to come in with a skill set that justifies a $30 or $35 an hour job. So somebody's going to sweep the floor, and they might start out at 18 or 20 bucks an hour. If there's not a housing opportunity for that person, and they don't have a family member or a partner they can share costs with, they may not be able to live here, and they may not be able to flourish here and build their resume and grow. So we need to be sensitive to that. And it's not just a matter of looking out for our neighbor. It is looking out for our businesses as well, because they need a diverse portfolio of candidates to choose from so that they can sustain their services to their customers. There's going to have to be a continued effort to develop housing that does qualify as affordable. We're unique in Saugerties. We have a HUD program in the town government, which is pretty unique and extraordinary. That is being squeezed as well. We used to do about 180 vouchers. I believe she's down to like 130 because of federal funding not maturing at the same pace the costs of rents are. That's something I think that needs to be addressed at government above us, or some other creative way to make those subsidies relevant again. But assessments are an important thing, and that was brought up. We trend in Saugerties. I don't enjoy trending because every year when those letters come out, I get quite a few phone calls from residents who are concerned, and I have to have a conversation with them that's not pleasant. But trending is a very important part of good government. By trending, we avoid those incremental revals, which are very painful. I remember the last time we did it, there was a group formed called SAGA, Saugertesians Against Government Abuse. There were literally 150 or 200 residents with their tax bills at every town board meeting because the disparity in assessments was not making a uniform share of the tax burden in land evenly. And I have a couple of bills in front of me. Saugerties now has the lowest tax rates of any of our peers. And that's not me saying that. You could go onto the Ulster County website and see it. And that in part is a function of the changes in assessment. What that translates to is residents in the town of Ulster who pay Saugerties schools are generally paying less for that service than their peers in Ulster. Same is true for Woodstock, and same is true for our county services. By redistributing those changes in housing values or business commercial values, it keeps the playing field level for everyone, and it very much impacts the entry level part more than others. I think it should be disturbing for folks when you see a sale of a property for $600,000 or $700,000 and the assessed value is only noted at 300. That's not healthy. That's an indication that the assessment roll is out of date and not reflective of the current trends in the housing market or the real estate market. And the people who are making up the difference generally are new homeowners. And that's discouraging for people. Just because someone's assessment is lower in a different community, it doesn't mean they're paying less. The state comes in, establishes those equalization rates. So even if your assessment from the local assessor says your house is worth 150, the state is going to assign a trend to it and the rates will be adjusted accordingly. And it generally leads to a higher burden for especially entry-level property owners.
So that's useful for homeowners and people who have the means to buy a home. But when we're thinking about the future of Saugerties, and I offer this as a follow-up to both of you, Gaetana first, how do we ensure that entry-level workers can afford to rent in Saugerties? What does the path forward look like in terms of creating more workforce housing?
Well, one of the things that should not have happened is when during the pandemic, when landlords were told that, or actually the tenants were told that they didn't have to pay their rent. So I know many landlords, who have had to go to court and have never received reimbursement. And that actually led to a lot of the evictions following the lifting of that. However, that has placed a reluctancy on people who have places that they could rent, because now the movement toward what is it called? There is a movement toward not basically restrictions on landlords, so that it makes it very, very difficult to have a tenant who turns out to be undesirable or maybe just not paying the rent, to have them removed.
Good cause eviction.
That's it. Good cause eviction. Thank you. Yeah. And so there's a big reluctancy on that. And it actually, I believe, makes people who own homes who could do that or have spaces in their homes, think more about utilizing short-term rentals in order to pay for the property taxes or for, just to keep their land or their house. So I think that everybody wants a tenant who's going to be responsible. They wouldn't be evicting them, if they were, responsible, and if they were serving their role as a tenant and paying the rent. What I find that people who have landlords right now who are individual landlords, they're paying reasonable rents. They're not paying outrageous rents. But when you get into the affordable housing project, you bring things into the neighborhood, and you bring people into the neighborhood that are not necessarily contributing to the neighborhood. And
Okay.
everyone wants a role.
Mhm.
They need to be working. They need to have jobs so that they can afford to stay.
Okay,
So-
Fred, do you just want a 30-second, answer to that follow-up because we have 15 minutes here and I have just a few more questions.
I think affordability, income supported housing is going to be an important component of the housing inventory in Saugerties. Like I said, I think there's an economic story that we need to be acknowledged and maintain. And, folks are going to they're going to need some support. And that comes in a lot of shapes and sizes. Rubco's is an amazing partner. Rent supported HUD vouchers, which we have. There's a lot of opportunities for that. And, I think it's a curiosity that our basic static population has remained around 19,000 for the last 30 or 40 years. However, we have those periods of fluctuation because of economic activity, and land use patterns have changed. Second home ownership, which I welcome, short-term rental, which I also welcome with restrictions, are changing land use patterns in a meaningful way, and smaller family sizes. So we need to continue to support our housing inventory. And I think the soft costs associated with developing new housing are going to have to get looked at some point too. It can't be a 3 to 5 year process to develop a project. It's just too long. The developers don't have the tolerance for that. And when you're seeing that cost add 10 or 15% to the overall cost of a project, that's just is becoming burdensome. So we have to look at that as well. But Saugerties cannot solve this problem by itself. It's a regional problem, and we have to work with our leadership and to kind of resolve it from that perspective, because it's comprehensive throughout the Hudson Valley.
Thank you. Okay. Is there an issue you feel doesn't get enough attention that you would want to address if reelected, Fred?
In what context? I think something that we undersell ourselves a little bit about is how pivotal tourism has become to our local economy. We've become a destination. We all know about the high points, the car show, the garlic festival, and those types of events. But we have recreational tourism in Saugerties that I think is unrivaled by most of our peers. We host multiple tournaments for softball, especially girls softball, during the summer months, where there's over 200 games played in a 3-day period. There's families coming from all over the Northeast to do that. They come here, they support our local businesses, they spend the weekend, they use our hospitality resources. That happens all the time. I did an interview this morning with Isabel Sofer, who runs the local, and she was sharing the talented jazz musicians that she has been able to bring into the area, and the fact that they stay here for a number of days and use our local resources as well. Our arts community is undersold by a long shot. We have some of the premier artists in the world in our area, and figures as large as us, Augusta Savage, don't get the recognition that they deserve for being Saugerties residents at one point in their career and some of the work they've done. So I think I would like to see us, we have one of the best landscape architecture features in the Hudson Valley with Opus 40. I feel like those are undersold and undercelebrated. So that's been kind of an effort for us as the years have gone on, and I want to double down on that if I get the opportunity to serve again.
Yeah, thank you, Fred. And yeah, same question to you, Gaetana. Is there an issue you feel doesn't get enough attention, or that you would want to address if elected?
Yeah, well, absolutely. And I'm going to go back to the beginning, which was honesty in government, because I actually have the voucher here. The voucher here, which shows three trips from Fred's vacation to Kingston. Okay, not 2, but 3. But nevertheless, he was not required to be there, and he has a deputy supervisor. So I think that people need to be unafraid of questioning the government, and I think that that needs to be addressed. And as there's freedom in thinking, there's going to be freedom in the arts also. There's going to be freedom in expression, and they shouldn't need to have the government subsidize the arts, because it should be something that generates for itself. I mean, it's wonderful that we have such talented people in our community. It is great, and I know a number of them. And I don't think that they want government subsidizing, their careers or their jobs. I think they'd like it to be freestanding.
How would you make government more accessible to Saugerties residents?
Well, for one thing, they have to not be afraid of retribution. Okay, they have to not be afraid that if they speak up, that their taxes are going to go up, for one thing, or that their taxes are going to be reconsidered. It has to be made more transparent also. It's very, very difficult to get records. Right now, I have a FOIL inquiring about some property that Fred owns, that the town committed and spent $1.5 million on property where Fred owns a home. Not a home, he owns property. And Fred did not recuse himself. He did not inform the town. I went to those meetings in which they were speaking about $1.5 million expenditures, because the road was collapsed in a good part, and there was money that needed to be spent. But it's just not honest. It's the state law. The government needs to follow the law.
Thank you. I feel like I have to give Fred a rebuttal to that, but also the question was, how would you make government more transparent? So you brought up FOIL requests, and I think that's an interesting way to talk about transparency in government. So maybe, Fred, you could talk a little bit about how FOIL requests are handled in the town, and then Gaetana, how you would handle them differently. But yeah, I want to give Fred a chance to rebut and then answer the question.
No, I apologize. I have to rebut that because it's the...
But keep it to 30 seconds, because I don't want this
it's going to be difficult. I'm glad she acknowledged that the road was collapsing, and we did spend $1.5 million. Credit to current Highway Superintendent Ray Mayon, who had the courage to take that project on. That road had been failing for decades. The property, to be specific, is owned by my late father's estate at this moment still. We did not benefit from that improvement whatsoever. There has been a road to that property forever. None of us have a home there. The property is accessible from the end of Hudson Street as well as Market Street. So in the event that the town government chose not to make the needed repair, we would still have access to that property. There's no incentive, no benefit to what had occurred. I'm very proud of the work that was done. Mr. Mayon handled that admirably and courageously, quite frankly. And going back once again to the $476 that I billed for my travel time, if I had not gone to that court case, we would be having a different conversation. And quite frankly, it would not be in my character not to have gone. We had spent the better part of a year trying to rein that scenario in. I had put countless hours with the building department, the police department, the DEC, and every other agency we could get on the phone to help resolve that matter. And what would it have looked like if me, after making all those phone calls, decided, well, I'm going to blow off court, the Ulster County Supreme Court. I'm glad I went. The residents who were being impacted deserved my attention on that matter.
That's 30
I'm
seconds.
glad I went, and I want it noted one more time.
We're getting lost in the
$4,000.
sauce.
You had no role there. You weren't called.
All right, please,
You were
please,
there for
please.
publicity
Thank you.
because it was
Thank
an
you very much.
election year.
This is not the venue for airing these types of grievances. I'm gonna call
I
it
apologize,
here.
but I'm not going to
I want to give you each
just
a minute
have
for
her
closing
continue
statements.
for propaganda campaign while I have an opportunity.
Thank you, Fred. I want to give you each a minute for closing statements. Please focus on your vision. I feel like there's been too much of the back and forth over grievances, over issues. I think what people really want to hear about is your singular vision for Saugerties. So Gaetana, as the challenger, I will give you the floor for a minute to give your closing statement, and then to Fred, and then we'll close it out. I thank you both for your time this morning.
Okay. Well, number one, I want to say that the FOIL is something that is in very, very concrete. There is the Freedom of Information laws. It's not something that is meant to be flexible. When something is foiled, there's supposed to be a response within 5 days. And I personally have had a response right now where I have foiled for information on the property that we're talking about. And it's been now 13 days with no response. And that's in violation of the Freedom of Information law. And that's a New York State regulation. So there's transparency. That's number one thing that has to be improved in Saugerties. And I want Saugerties to grow gracefully. I don't want it to be overwhelmed. Right now down here in Glasgow, we've had housing projects. We have apartment buildings. A lot of the land now is covered with buildings, with some of it is housing, single family homes, and that's great. A lot of it is apartments, and a lot of people occupying these apartments are people who couldn't afford to stay in their house anymore. A lot of them are widows who lost their husbands, and they can't afford the taxes, they can't afford the upkeep of a home. So they move into these these apartment buildings, not because they want to, because they love their homes, but they can't afford to stay in their homes because the costs are so expensive. So I want to see it grow gracefully. I would like to see Kings Highway developed. I'd like to see that's what it was zoned for. I am definitely against rezoning because 3 men who have good reputations, and they do have good reputations, and they're respected people in the town because they requested it, based on an investment that they decided to make. It's an investment they decided to make, and they're investing that the town is going to go in their direction. My understanding is also that property is going to be sold, that they're not even going to be the ones to develop it. We have no assurance that that's not the case.
Okay, thank you.
Basically, that's it. Thank you. And thank you for doing this, Noah.
Thank you. Yeah, Fred.
You're a brave guy.
So we have managed to celebrate leadership roles amongst our peers in Ulster County. We are the leader in climate. We are the leader in many ways in policing. We are the leader and at the forefront of energy efficiency efforts and housing. And I'm proud of all that, and I'm very proud of the people that have dedicated their time to make that possible. We can do a lot more, and I look forward to continuing the efforts that we have ongoing and to work with those folks to try to make Saugerties the beacon in Ulster County for economic activity, for highest standards in policing, highest standards in government, housing opportunities. And I disagree strongly with the summary of the Winston Farm. These individuals are picking up where we left off in the 2009 document, which the town sponsored in part with grants to come up with visionary solutions for Winston Farm. The next step of that process was to do exactly what is happening now, the DGIS. The new ownership has footed the bill for all of them. And they share the vision that the current zoning is not in the best interest of our community. And they are willing in some capacity to compromise their opportunities to develop the land to try to achieve something that will be good for all of our residents. There's a natural tension there between preservationists and people who want to see even more development. And I think that tension will guide us to a good solution that is sensitive to open space, creates housing opportunities that we need, creates commercial opportunities that will create some jobs and provide economic benefits to the community, and be a trigger for some of the longstanding traffic improvements that we have been trying to motivate the state to invest in. One of the things that came out of SAMA study for traffic was improvements to that area. The most notable change in that interchange is the light off the thruway, which we fought very hard for, and I was very proud happened under my stewardship. But it wasn't just me. We had the fire department, the police department, thruway, and DOT all in the same room finally, and everybody saw the merit in the light, and we have it. But that doesn't mean that the problems are resolved there. There's still a lot of traffic problems. And I think Winston Farm could be the tip-off to finally seeing some of those more permanent infrastructure improvements that will enhance that area from a traffic perspective. I'm grateful for the opportunity to serve, and I'm grateful for Overlook sponsoring this today.
Yeah, thank you both. I just want to take the time to thank challenger and conservative nominee Gaetana Ciarlante and incumbent supervisor Democratic and Working Families Party nominee Fred Costello. Thank you both for your time, and get out the vote. Take care. Bye.